Hello and welcome to Coconut Chats, everyone. Today you've got me, Harita, and I'm joined by Chris. How are you, Chris?
Hey, Harita. Good evening. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Today we've got a guest from India. Professor Sukanya Phansalkar is a certified psychologist, counselor, psychotherapist, and life coach. She's the founder and chief therapist of Manuspasha Counselling and Training Centre. She's also the director of operations at Aryabhat Institute of Mathematics and Sciences and a published international researcher, as well as so much more, which we have listed in the podcast show notes. But what makes her even more inspiring is that she was infected with polio when she was only 2 months old. Her family lived in a remote part of India and there was no vaccination available at the time. She collapsed from the neck down and doctors told her parents that there were very low to no chances of survival. But she bet the odds and she took her first steps when she was 9 years old. And here we are a few decades later chatting to her. Hi Sukanya, how are you?
Hi, Harita. I'm good. I'm very glad to be here and be part of this podcast. I would love to share my story with all of you, and I hope it helps somebody somewhere.
That's really amazing. Thank you so much for joining us all the way from India. So first we'll focus on your profession. Tell us about Manuspasha and how you set it up.
So basically, I started with Manuspasha. It's my brainchild. I started with it 10 years ago. And I come from a suburban area, and people were struggling to have quality mental health care in my town. So I thought I should do something about it. And I started my first, this is the first standalone therapy center in my town. So I started alone, and now we are a team of 10, and we work all over the globe helping people from Indian orientation have access to, you know, quality mental health care, because a lot of times therapy is not affordable and people are not able to reach out to it. So we function fully online nowadays. After the pandemic, we started functioning fully online, and we provide therapy, assessment, and counseling to people from all over the world who are from Indian orientation, of course. And it's been going well for us.
So what are your main type of clientele at Manuspasha?
Okay, so basically, when I started working, I was working with a varied age group, and we still continue to do that. But my specialty is mostly in young adults and adults. I work with their life orientation, I work with their relationship issues, their personal issues, and I also specialize in career counseling. So I do my bit in more holistic approach, and I have got few associates who work with people of other age groups and other issues that they might be facing.
That's really good. I think, yeah, India definitely needs a bit more focus on mental health and counseling.
Yes,
and all of that.
definitely.
But what made you choose psychology as a career pathway?
Actually, I came into the field accidentally, but because I have seen the other side of table, I always say that I have been on the other end of the table, so I know how it feels to lack the help that I needed at a certain point of my life. So I came into the field accidentally because I was pursuing my education to join medical fraternity, but it was physically exhausting for me. As you mentioned, I have I'm a polio survivor, and it took a toll on me physically to attend my higher middle school in science. The practicals, the hectic schedule, the coaching, everything was taking a huge toll on my health, and my parents wanted me to pursue something which would be healthy uh, for me physically as well as mentally. So they wanted me to have something which is intellectually challenging, but at the same time I would be taken care of physically. So then I started exploring things, and here I am after, like, let's say 15 years after that, working as a psychologist.
So 15 years ago, did you see a big need for more psychologists and help with adolescents that are going through different troubles in their lives?
Definitely, definitely. I when I shifted my career, I was deep down in my, you know, blues, I would say, because I always wanted to be a medical professional, and I didn't know if it was physically feasible for me. And I started my education, and then I had to drop it. So it was very much devastating for me, and we didn't have anybody to guide us through it. Choosing the right career, making the right life choices, we didn't have anybody to assist us, and that somehow made me feel that things could be different, things could be better. And when I came into the field of psychology, I guess it gave me a much greater idea of the need that we have in India, and the number of practitioners that we have against it. It's quite low. People don't opt for therapy, they opt for it when it's too late. And that's what started me to think, uh, I need to do something about it.
Yeah. So how many years of your medical degree did you do before you made the change to psychology?
Okay, I was, so you might be knowing that there is an entrance that you need to clear for medical degree in India. So I was preparing for my entrance, and I had to drop the preparation itself. So I couldn't pursue any education in medical science per se. I had to drop my science education while I was in 10th standard. Like that's the higher middle school in India.
Hmm. Okay, so I guess the next part, I kind of want to get into a bit of your medical history and how how you were
Mhm,
diagnosed with polio.
mhm.
How did it affect your childhood? Because, you were diagnosed with it very, very young in life. So I guess
Right,
you wouldn't know what life is like without polio. But
exactly.
how did it affect your mental health as a child? Were you bullied or treated differently to other kids your age? And just how did it affect your life?
Unfortunately, I'll have to say yes to that. Yes, I was bullied quite a lot. But to be very honest, my family was a big support to me. And that kept me sane at that moment. They helped me to build my own self-esteem. They helped me to build my own self-identity. But at the same time, the society that was outside, they challenged me quite a bit. I was challenged with, lack of socialization. Uh, I had very few friends at that time. People didn't know about my condition. So the kind of questions that I used to be, surrounded with, they were quite upsetting, I would say. People would question my ability to perform academically. People would question my ability to do certain things. And that was quite disheartening at that time. But my parents, especially my mom, was very, very supportive at that time. My father was he was a rock at that time. He didn't let me go down, and my mom always encouraged me to do things normally. I was always treated like a normal child. My parents never let me realize that there was something lacking in my life, because they always made sure that I had options available in front of me so that I can do things that other children are doing.
Mm. And I also mentioned at the beginning that there wasn't a lot of medical treatment available back
Yes.
then, and also in the part of India that you lived in. But
Mhm.
as the years have gone on, have the medical treatments for polio improved? Is there anything that you can take
Yes.
to make the symptoms better?
Yes. I mean, there are hardly any polio cases nowadays, but
Mm.
the ones who are already been through it, like people of my age, or like 5 to 6 years younger than me, because after I got infected, I guess the pulse polio program was introduced in India. So the mass vaccination and vaccination drives have helped a lot to control the spread of polio, and there are hardly any cases nowadays.
Mm.
Uh, so new treatment, I would say that there are a lot of vaccination opportunities that are available, and they are preventing polio. But at the same time, yes, the medical science has evolved in India so much so that there are different therapies available, like the kind of surgery I had when I was 9 years old, which helped me to take a step further in my life, like actually, like literally and figuratively. I would say that such treatments have advanced very much so. So yes, there is better medical care available in India, and they are available in every part of India nowadays. So I'm really glad that not a lot of people would have to struggle to get such treatment now.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I live in New Zealand, and
Mhm.
these days, yeah, you don't hear of anyone getting polio. So, you know, like, I guess in a country like India, things are a lot different. But how does someone actually get polio? What causes it?
So it's a viral infection, as we all know, and there are multiple modes of transmission. As I said that I was living in a very at the time I was born, I was in a rural area, and there were not a lot of awareness about polio at that time. So I don't know how I got infected, but it was definitely diagnosed a little later that yes, it is polio. Because testing was not available immediately. I had to go through a lot of research, like my parents had to go through a lot of research, and then they came to the conclusion that yes, it is polio.
Yeah.
And I have a very rare type of polio, so my symptoms were mixed. I have my sensations intact in my legs, and that's what made it difficult for the diagnosis to actually happen. So I had to go through the, like, all over India. My parents were contacting people all over India to identify what exactly is happening, and why am I experiencing symptoms like this. And by doing that, I guess till the age of 9, my polio was only limited to my legs, and my other body parts had recovered, because as you mentioned, I was paralyzed neck down, and it was difficult. Like, they had to teach me to sit, they had to teach me to crawl, they had to potty train me, and it was difficult than any other ordinary cases that you see. So I guess I don't know how I survived everything, but my parents have got first-hand experience of that struggle, I would say.
So then after that, you mentioned you got a surgery when you were 9 years old. So what type of surgery did they do? Was it on your legs so that you could walk again?
Right. So as you might know that polio affects your muscular structure and your neural structure as well. So they did a muscular transplant. They took a muscle out of my abdomen, which was an extra muscle, is what they say. So which is not very necessary for your functioning. So they take that muscle out, and they had to cut it in few parts and place it all over my both my legs. So they attached that active piece of muscle into the different parts of my body, and that's how they start, like, my muscles started growing, they started responding to the growth that I was supposed to have, and it started supporting my locomotor experience.
Oh, wow. So then you would have only learned to walk after that when you were
After
9?
that, yes, as I said, I took my first step when I was 9 years old, and that was very much assisted at that time. And now I walk with support, but it's much more independent than what I experienced at that point of time.
Sukanya, obviously your story is very inspiring, right? More so because very inspiring for the women, right? Because even the benchmark is, as a woman, the minute she is born, she's faced with a lot of prejudices. It's a patriarchal society, agree it or not. So there comes a phase in every woman's life where we are very, how should I put it? We are very conscious of our external appearances. We want to adhere to a certain standard. We want to come across as attractive, blah, blah, blah. Do you think in general, and I'm not being divisive here, I'm not being racist, but I'm trying to talk from a woman's perspective, do you think if a woman is hit with a disability, it kind of crushes her soul? Because, all the time we are judged against these beauty standards all the time.
Yes.
So is it harder on, I know gender doesn't matter, but you know where I'm trying to
No, but
come
it
from.
does. It does.
It does?
Medically, it does. Because,
Okay.
I remember my doctors telling my parents that, before I start my menses, they need to go through with this surgery. They could not wait anymore, because once my menses start, my body would stop growing in a way. It would stop growing in a way they wanted it to. So I had to go through that surgery. They had to wait to that threshold. They couldn't do it too early. They couldn't do it too later. So yes, that was one point. And second point, as you mentioned, the patriarchy. I was asked very stupid questions while I was growing up. I mean, random people would come and they would ask me whether my reproductive system is working well or not. They were more, worried about me than my parents would be. My marriage was a big question for them, whether or not I would get married, whether or not I would make a career. So I was given stupid, I'm sorry, I'm using this word, but they were actually very stupid advices. And no teenager needs to hear those advices. My relatives would come to me and tell me, distant relatives, of course, because my immediate family is quite supportive. My aunts, my uncles, they are quite supportive, even my cousins. But there were distant relatives who have not seen my struggle. And they would come to my parents and they would ask them to get me married by the time I get 18. 18 is the legal age one gets married in India. And they were criticized. My parents were criticized for not educating me enough and educating me more than what it is required. In both ways, they were criticized. And I was supposed to, my mom made me very much independent in every household thing that she trained me, not because I'm a girl, but because she knew that I needed to survive alone at some point of time. So it was a huge thing for me to, get bombarded by these questions. And as a teenager, when people tell you that you should expect less from your life, that crushes your spirit. But thank God I had a very, supportive parents. And my sister is I don't know, she's a firecracker. She would blast anybody who would come in a wrong way to me. And my friends, of course, I have got a wonderful set of friends. They were very supportive at that very young age. They knew what I needed exactly. So yeah, I got wonderful set of bodyguards, you can say.
But Sukanya, that is one of your sentence really kind of intrigued me. It's, obviously, as a woman, we are always seen as reproductive organs, but do you think it becomes more of a question or a taunt when a woman has a disability? That, oh, how will you be able to bear children? As if that's the only thing which is concerning in her life. Do you think that happens in reality?
That happened twice in my life. This is a very personal piece of my life that I would like to share, because I went through a loss as well. I lost my firstborn, and I don't know, people were in question that, is it because of my disability that I went through that loss? Or is it because of my physical structure, I could not carry my firstborn to full term? So that was something. And when my second one was born 2 years back, I was again questioned if I'm taking a risk again, I'm risking that child's life again. And I don't think people would ask such questions to a man or somebody without a disability. But my medical conditions had nothing to do with my polio affectedness, but still I was questioned with a lot of such things. And the loss that I went through 4 years ago, I lost my son to traumatic childbirth. He survived for 4 months, but he couldn't make it after that. And everybody had this unanswered question in their mind that whether or not I went through that trauma because I am a person with disability. And my doctors and my other family members had to throw these answers back at them, that it has nothing to do with my condition, but it is a general, like preeclampsia could happen to anybody. And it happens to a lot of women nowadays because they lead a stressful life. So yeah, I had to educate a lot of people about it.
I'm so sorry to hear about your loss, but
yeah, people can always be very fast to assume without actually knowing the full story or even asking you for clarification. You know, I think
exactly,
especially with Indians, they're always very quick to spread gossip about whatever they think. Yeah.
Yes.
But it's really good to hear that, you know, you did have a child 2 years ago who is healthy. So, you know, that would have just shut down all the rumors because
he would do that because he is active for 2 of my children. He takes the energy from my firstborn as well. So yes, he would cause a havoc in everybody who asks questions to me. So yes, there is another addition to my bodyguards now.
Nice. In your experience and in your lifetime, how have you seen people with disabilities being treated in India? And like, I don't know if you've traveled overseas, but how do you think people in India with disabilities are treated compared to people in other more Western countries, for example? And you know, you kind of touched on this before, but how does it affect their mental health?
It does affect a lot because, you know, once you have a visible disability, the disability that you can see, people assume a lot of things. I have had to ask people not to be intrusive about it, and I also had to ask people to not to help unnecessarily, because there are 2 ways people could be, you know, treating you. Either they would be too inquisitive and asking questions which are irrelevant, or they could, you know, offer you help where you don't even need it. I'm a very independent person and I don't need help where I can do things on my own. So I prefer not to take help when I don't need it. So I had to ask a lot of people not to help me because I can do things on my own, and they had to treat me just like any other human being. So there are 2 types of people, one who are insensitive towards it, and the other are who are like hypersensitive towards it. So there is a lot of awareness that needs to be created. And one of my friends, she's amazing in this. She runs a, you know, stand-up show just to highlight how people in India should treat disabled people. And I was so inspired by her that I started giving clear answers to people, like wherever it is needed. So yes, I would say that people in India, people with disability in India are treated quite differently than people in abroad. But things are changing. Things are definitely changing. And to whoever who is listening to this podcast, I would say that consent is the key. Everywhere, you should ask the person whether or not they would need help, and you should ask a person whether or not they would be comfortable answering your questions. Because I was confident enough to talk about anything and everything in my life, but not everybody has got the comfort to answer such questions. So this is something that I would really, really like to highlight.
That's very true. So what are your future plans for your career, and also in terms of polio awareness and how to break the bias for women with disabilities?
First of all, for Manuspasha, we started functioning fully online 3 years ago, as I mentioned, and it has helped us to reach people all over the globe. So I'm planning to expand it further, you know, provide more affordable or free sessions to people who are financially underprivileged. This is one of our goals. Another goal is to, you know, get into the training part of therapists in India, because there are a lot of untrained therapists that are working here, and it needs to be changed, because it's like treating somebody without fully being trained in it. So it's very risky, and we are planning to bring this change in the area that we work in. And another thing that you asked, that like, how am I planning to create the awareness about polio or any other disability? I would say that I'm trying to, you know, gain as many platforms as possible, and make our presence be there, so that people would see that even if you are encountered with one disability, it doesn't have to be your entire identity. You can be much more than your disability. Your identity could be much more than that. And that's why whenever I go out, whenever people call me out to talk about my life, I talk about my work first, because then people understand that you could be much more than just your limitation.
Yeah, I think that's very true, right? Like if someone saw your CV, for example, they would have no idea that you have gone through polio until you actually tell them. And that's why you need to get all of that out first, so that there's no judgment. Yeah.
Right.
You're doing amazing work. And I think
thank you so much.
Especially in India, like I've never lived in India, but I've been to India a few times, and I am Indian. And I see how, anyone that's a little bit different is just treated completely differently to what you call normal people. And it's, it's not helpful for anyone to be like that.
Right.
So it's really good. It's good to see that, what you're doing to normalize different disabilities.
Thank you so much.
Is there anything you would like to add before we wrap up in terms of advocacy work you're doing, or anything for polio survivors, and also psychology and counselling type of work in India?
Right. I'll talk about the disability awareness first, because that is very much needed right now, because we don't have accessible infrastructure in India. A lot of times, like nowadays, government is taking a lot of initiative to do it, but non-government places where I need to go, or where I need to be present, I find it a lot of difficult sometimes, that places are not accessible. I sometimes have to use my wheelchair, and I cannot reach such spaces. And I have people and means around me which I can use, but not everybody is fortunate enough or independent enough to do that. So I would like to create awareness about this, that if you are somebody who is into infrastructure, or trying to build a setup in India, I would definitely request people to build it accessible, so that a lot of the percentage of disabled people might be too less, but if you deny opportunity to one person, their whole world changes. And I have experienced that, because it is something that could take you down. So more accessible spaces, more accessible infrastructure is something that India needs. And about the work that I do, basically, as I said, that once in my life, I have also been through, struggle psychologically. So everyone who is listening to this, I would tell them that no matter what, you can seek help, and seeking help helps, actually. So professional help, authentic help could take you to miles ahead of where you are right now. So do not hesitate to ask for help. If you are somebody who has a companion who is going through psychological struggle, seek help for them and support them throughout it. Their outcome could be really different if they get the right kind of help.
Thanks, Sukanya. That was amazing. And before we wrap up, can we please get you to spell out your social media handles for our listeners out there?
Yes. So my Insta handle is Breathe with Sukanya. And you can find it. It's a private profile, but yes, if somebody wants to follow me, I'll definitely be happy to have them. And my other the work oriented Insta handle is @mana.sparsha, MANA.SPARSHA, mana.sparsha.
Thanks, Sukanya. That was amazing, inspiring. We already know. Thank you for giving us your time.
Thank you so much.
It's our pleasure. So you don't have to thank us. And a little word for our listeners, for those who've heard us for a while, I really hope that you like what we produce and put on the table. And for those of you who've heard us for the first time, this was Sukanya Phansalkar speaking about disability, speaking about disability not being an obstacle in a life, be it a man, be it a woman, and speaking about breaking the bias about a person with disability. So I really hope that you've liked her conversation, her journey. And if you've got any questions, any feedback for us, please feel free to write to us at coconutchats@gmail.com. We are also available on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram as Coconut Chats. You can connect with us wherever you want. We are also living in very, very troubled times. It's very important that we take care of ourselves and the people around us. So please stay safe and keep spreading love, because that's what we need. We shall be back again with another interesting conversation. Till then, stay safe. And Sukanya, thank you once again for joining us.
Thank you.
And thanks for having me, both of you.
Bye, everyone.